The single-stall lavatory smelled faintly of damp stone. In the stall, a cauldron had been propped on a flushing toilet, and over it something crackled. The water inside the cauldron was clear. Tiny bubbles rose lazily from the bottom. Someone had only just set it to heat. Heh! Snape allowed himself a sneer that might have been relief. Creative, propping a cauldron on a toilet. It seems the occupant has unusual habits. Vizette, see what's in the cistern. Dumbledore made room, and Vizette stepped into the stall. He drew his wand and whispered, Lumos. The light revealed a row of transparent jars tucked into the cistern. Vizette picked them up one by one. Lacewing flies, live leeches, fluxweed, knotgrass. That's almost certainly for Polyjuice Potion. Snape's interest sharpened. Explain your reasoning. Vizette, unperturbed by the two senior wizards watching him, lined up the jars as if lecturing. Leeches are known for causing shrinking effects when crushed and used in potions requiring condensed leech juice. But live leeches suggest a different use, their ability to absorb. Polyjuice relies on absorption and transformation. If you think of the drinker as the leech, the potion uses that property to take on another's appearance. Fluxweed and knotgrass are stabilizers for the brew. Without them, it won't hold. Snape's eyes narrowed to slits, a dangerous glint beneath them. Brewing polyjuice, so either someone's trying to expose a secret or infiltrate somewhere. Corridor attacks are inefficient, Vizette agreed. If they want to reach many people at once, slipping into a common room would do it. 10 years ago, these sorts of schemes were common. A faint noise from outside the lavatory made the three of them freeze, wands already in hand. There's no powdered bicorn horn, no shredded boomslang skin, Snape muttered. I asked Percy in private. Polyjuice isn't an ordinary potion. Some ingredients are restricted. Now what do we do? It's awkward, Vizette said. The only place I can think of is Snape's storeroom. He would have those ingredients. Outside the stall, two young voices drew nearer, high, hurried whispers that the stone seemed to swallow until they were right by the door. Snape's storeroom, Ron's voice wavered. Do you think the Chamber of Secrets thing could just be a prank? It's been almost a month since Halloween, Hermione replied, steady and impatient. If it's a prank, fine, but if there really is a chamber and something is attacking Muggleborns, we can't just wait. We could brew polyjuice, Ron said. Steal a bit. Get into the staff areas. We've got the invisibility cloak, remember? That's not, Hermione began, immediately softening. We'd only use it to investigate, and if we start now, it'll be ready by Christmas. Touching. Snape's voice cut off her defense like a blade. Hermione and Ron both shrieked as the invisibility cloak slipped from their hands and fell, a dark smear, into the water in the cauldron. For a moment, all that was audible was the slap of wet cloth. Snape's smile was terrible and delighted, like a fisherman with a prize catch. Do you require gingerbread to go with your lavatory brew? He drawled. My storeroom does contain powdered bicorn horn and shredded boomslang skin. How about I send them as a Christmas gift? Both Hermione and Ron went crimson, the color rushing up their necks. They tried to speak, a flustered tangle of denials and gestures. Tears pricked in Hermione's eyes. Violating curfew, attempting to steal a professor's property, Gryffindor loses 100 points. Snape's face turned as cold and hard as stone. His voice had the clipped rhythm of a sentence pronounced to a class. Dumbledore stepped forward in his usual calm. Miss Granger, Mr. Weasley, would you explain why you are here? Why attempt to brew polyjuice? Hermione drew a ragged breath and steadied herself. Headmaster Dumbledore, we wanted to investigate the Chamber of Secrets. We thought polyjuice would let us question people without alerting them. Honesty gains Gryffindor 10 points. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled a little as he spoke. Who is your intended target? Hermione glanced at Snape, then at Ron, and began to falter. Dumbledore stroked his beard and murmured, Severus, I'll speak with them outside. Fine. Snape sounded sour. And you needn't thank me. I was merely deducting the obvious, guided by school rules. Of course. Dumbledore smiled faintly. He gestured, and Hermione and Ron followed him out of the stall, drying their faces, if not their dignity. As the three of them stepped into the corridor, a thin, mournful voice drifted from behind them. Why do you always disturb me? Why? Vizette and Snape whirled. Floating in midair, a few feet from the cistern, was a girl in a school uniform, her face pinched into the perpetual gloom that had given her her name. She looked exactly like the ghost Vizette had mentioned earlier, and Snape's eyebrow rose. Myrtle shrank back, fear suddenly plain on her face. "You must be Myrtle Warren," Vizette said gently. Myrtle hovered back another inch, still wary of Snape. She sniffed. "No one's called me that in ages. You're polite." Snape folded his arms and stepped aside, chin tipped toward Vizette in a clear, deal-with-it motion. Vizette took the opening. "Miss Warren," he began, careful and soft. "I was told, wasn't it here that you, passed away? 302. It's a pleasure to be with you. Inherit the glory." Before Draco's words had even faded, a stone serpent coiled up and shoved a heavy stone door open. The Slytherin common room yawned before him. He let himself in and collapsed into a carved armchair. After the Quidditch match and being hauled off to the headmaster's office by Professor Snape, the evening's frantic pace left him sleepy. But the events of the night had kept him uneasy. Why had Dobby been caught? Why was Vizette in the head's office? What were those pipes they kept mentioning? And what was Snape's instruction? Could the heir really be in Slytherin? That would make sense. The heir would control the Chamber of Secrets. It would be odd if he weren't among us. Just as a headache began to throb, Pansy's voice broke into his thoughts. "Draco." She slid into the chair beside him, concern on her face. "I heard from Crabbe that Snape took you away. What happened?" Draco remembered Snape's order. If anyone asked about tonight's events, he was to report the questioner's name to Snape. He hesitated, unsure how much to say. Pansy pressed on. "Another attack? Were you hurt?" Pansy was a friend. It was only natural she'd worry about why he'd been taken. Draco shook his head. "What could happen to me? The chamber only goes after mudbloods. It's nothing to do with me." Pansy wouldn't let it go. "But Crabbe said Snape didn't look well when he took you away." "Perhaps Dumbledore thinks I attacked Harry Potter?" Pansy offered. "Snape doesn't exactly like Potter, does he?" Draco snorted, mocking Snape's clipped tone. "Harry Potter? Just a Gryffindor full of gillyweed." "You sound just like him," Pansy giggled. "Where did you see Potter? The hospital wing? I hurt his arm." "Nothing," Draco interrupted, shaking his head. He studied Pansy. "Pansy, are you acting strange tonight?" Her smile frayed and fell away. She looked hurt. "I was only worried. If you don't want to talk, never mind." She left, and Draco, relieved, rubbed his temples and made his way up to the dormitory. Not long after, Pansy returned to the common room and sank into the seat Draco had just vacated. She held a diary in her lap and began scribbling with fierce energy. The words poured out on the page. "Pansy, I'm furious. You did everything for him, and he can't even trust you. He doesn't treat you like a friend at all." She jabbed the quill so hard, the ink nearly bled through the paper. "Did they find me out? That house elf appearing out of nowhere. Too much of a coincidence. Look at him. Malfoy knows you're worried, but he won't tell you a thing. We are the heirs of Salazar Slytherin's glory, and he understands nothing." "Yes, he understands nothing." Pansy's hand trembled. "What should we do? Should we keep going? What happened to Draco?" A new voice answered from the diary in neat, almost silk-stained letters. "Of course we must continue. I know who is pulling strings. Albus Dumbledore. Only the headmaster could command a house elf like that." Pansy's quill raced. "Draco Malfoy has been deceived by Dumbledore. He wants to control the Malfoy family, just like he came to threaten you before. Then our task is heavier. Not only must we purge the mudbloods of Hogwarts, but we must also overthrow Dumbledore and save Draco Malfoy." "Save Draco," Pansy wrote, the words bright with resolve. "Mr. Riddle, what should we do? Dumbledore is suspicious. We cannot sit idle. We need a scapegoat. We will lie low, gather strength, and wait for the right moment." "Find a scapegoat? Vizette Lovegood." Pansy's pen nearly tore the page. "Frame him? Do you mean it?" "As brilliant as ever, Pansy," the diary replied. "He loves old books. Use that. Create an object in the library to attract him." Pansy colored, writing faster until her handwriting blurred. "What should I have the house elf bring me so I can prepare?" "I will teach you a way to create a magical item," the diary answered. "Make another diary and leave it in the library. He will find it. I will guide him to open the Chamber of Secrets. When he is discovered, he will become the focus of suspicion. Do you like that?" Pansy's grin was cruel. "Let him become the heir. We will bestow that glory upon him." "Yes," the diary continued, "but you must relax your body and mind, as before, and allow me to integrate. Only then will you remember the method. Shall we begin? Good. Pansy did not hesitate. She pricked her finger with a pin, pressed her blooded fingertip to the page, then let her eyes droop. Sleep took her. From the diary came a stir, then a presence. Tom Riddle stepped out of the inked pages, a man becoming unnervingly solid as though he had truly taken form. He sat a short distance away from Pansy, legs crossed, fingers laced on his knees, a faint smile curled at his lips. Can it detect movement? Is this some ward against plotting? He muttered, as if to himself. Fortunately, I cast a counterspell on the book. It will not be discovered. He looked down at the sleeping Pansy, then regarded her with a mixture of disdain and something very like fondness. We have whiled away much dull time together, he said softly. You have fed me enough vitality to strengthen me again, but now we must part, though you will remain useful. He rose. Black and green light braided around him, making him less a man and more a shifting shadow of color. He spread his arms and drifted toward Pansy. When he touched her, his form scattered like sand, a cascade of motes of light. The motes streamed together into a single thread and flowed into Pansy's skin, into her face, into the very corners of her mind. 303, Secret Room Entrance. For most ghosts, death was an easy subject to discuss, which was why Vizette had asked the question in the first place. You're quite a talker. Myrtle's mournful expression softened, and a hint of cheer crept into her voice. She drifted down a little, pointed at one of the stalls, and said with false pride, I remember it so clearly. I was crying in this stall. Snape's voice cut through cold and clipped. He's asking how you died. Horrible. You look exactly like the Bloody Baron. Myrtle snapped, hurt and defensive. She flew back to her usual place, her voice breaking into a sob. I just heard a boy talking. I was furious and came out to tell him to leave, and then there were a pair of big, yellowish eyes, and then I died. You all bully me. You're all so annoying. She lingered on the last complaint, drawing the words out before rushing toward one of the toilets with a sob and vanishing. Vizette stepped into the stall where she'd pointed. She said it was here, he murmured. He acted out the scene as best he could. If the boy had entered the bathroom normally, then Myrtle would have heard something. Vizette fixed his gaze on the wash basin not far away. In the center of the basin array stood a cylindrical column that rose to the ceiling. Snape had already waved his wand, muttered, and shook his head. No magic detected. That means it's very well hidden. Conventional detection won't pick it up. Could it be Parseltongue? Vizette frowned, raised his wand, and cast Lumos. He inspected drains, pipes, basins, and faucets carefully. On the side of one faucet, he noticed a faint, scratch-like pattern that resembled a snake. He checked the other faucets and found similar scratches, but most were shallow, decoys. Only one had a deeper, more convincing snake motif. Dumbledore returned to the bathroom. Hermione and Ron were not with him, likely sent back to their dormitories. Dumbledore stood beside Snape. Any findings? He asked. Snape shook his head. Nothing useful. Perhaps Parseltongue is needed. That's what we concluded back then as well, Dumbledore nodded. The Ministry and we searched thoroughly and found nothing. Let's start here. Vizette took a breath and, returning to the reptilian mockery of the faucet, made a soft, hissing sound. Open. Both Dumbledore and Snape felt the shift, a subtle magical fluctuation running through the wash basins. Snape grasped Vizette's shoulder and pulled him back, wand at the ready. The individual basins that ringed the column slid outward in a silent, fluid motion. The column itself vanished, replaced by a large pipe segment that stuck out from the floor. Dumbledore raised his wand, and a silver phoenix-shaped Patronus burst from its tip, flying straight into the pipe. That's a poor demonstration, Snape said, dryly. Unless you can alter the form of your corporeal Patronus, it's unwise to reveal it. Dumbledore laughed softly. Severus is not wrong. I was careless, but this once, I'll remember that. Vizette produced a small notepad and scribbled the remark. He looked at Dumbledore. Headmaster, could your Patronus scout below? It's not exactly scouting, Dumbledore admitted, but a corporeal Patronus can sense dark magic and warn of danger. Be prepared for an attack. After a moment, he added, Let us go down. It's deeper than I expected. All right. Vizette nodded and raised his wand. Snape arched an eyebrow. You're coming down too? Severus, this is the wizarding world, Dumbledore said with a fond, resigned smile. Danger comes with the territory. Even in peacetime, that never changes. Think of potion making, Quidditch, care of magical creatures. Hazards are everywhere, Snape grumbled. Vizette tapped the bubblehead charm, holding his wand across his chest, then flicked it upward. A great bubble formed and enveloped him. It quickly collapsed into a thin film, clinging to his body like a second skin. He'd modified the charm by combining it with transfiguration, what he called his Rubik's Cube theory, expanding the bubblehead charm from covering only the head to encasing the whole body. See? Dumbledore sounded pleased. Severus, relax. Besides, the entrance seems to require Parseltongue. Who knows if you'll need it further down? Then let's go. Snape touched the tip of his wand to the pipe, and with a short leap, dropped inside. Dumbledore shook his head, chuckling. If Severus insists on leading, I shall bring up the rear. Headmaster, I'm going down. Vizette braced one hand on the rim of the wash basin and slipped into the pipe. The surface inside was slick, surrounded by sticky, foul residue. Thanks to the protective film of the bubblehead charm, he couldn't smell the rot or feel the filth clinging to him, but he imagined it all the same. The pipe twisted and turned, with many offshoots leading to other parts of the castle, but they kept to the main shaft and descended at a steady pace. Eventually, the steep drop evened out and the glow of a Lumos spell shone ahead. Snape had already emerged into a cavernous tunnel, crouched with his wand casting light and picking through debris. Lumos, Vizette repeated and illuminated his own wand. The floor was covered with tiny, brittle bones, rats, frogs, snakes, all crumbling at the slightest pressure. The tunnel felt familiar to Vizette. It tugged at his memory like the Pensieve room had. He closed his eyes and cast Magic Eye. Silver-blue threads of ancient magic shimmered in the air, bathing the space in a faint, otherworldly glow. He moved carefully, mapping the cavern in his mind as Dumbledore and Snape examined it with equal care. The bones were old enough to dust underfoot. Vizette collected the sense of ancient magic, feeling it coil around the tunnel like an old pulse. Dumbledore met his eyes and waved him forward. Vizette cast Magic Eye again and saw the ancient power more clearly, silver blue, slow and patient, filling the rocks and air of the chamber. Walking through the cave felt like passing through a deserted graveyard. The floor was littered with tiny, brittle bones that crunched and clicked underfoot, and the walls breathed through thin pipes that sometimes expelled sudden gusts, at first a chill at the nape of the neck, then a whoosh as if the air itself sighed over the skeletons. The passage was so dark that Vizette cast a night vision charm on himself to avoid stepping into any unseen pitfall. Dumbledore led the way, Snape brought up the rear, and the three moved cautiously on. "Wait," Dumbledore whispered, halting them. Vizette peered ahead. In the dim distance, a huge shape loomed, like the outline of a giant snake. Dumbledore lifted his wand, and a rustling sound came from the ground. Vizette looked down to see a fat rat darting nimbly among the bones, scurrying toward the massive object. "Just a shed skin," Dumbledore said, his voice returning to normal. "Let's have a look." It was the largest shed skin Vizette had ever seen. An adult could easily crawl inside it. Dumbledore produced a small silver gadget from his pocket, like a lighter, and flicked it open. With a soft click, a bluish sphere of light glowed into being. It pulsed like something alive, bathing the shed skin in bright, clear light. Under it, the scales became a vivid green, the patterns dazzling and intricate. "A basilisk's shed skin," Vizette said quickly. The memory of spiders swarming from the castle windows flashed through his mind. Spiders fled the castle for a reason. The basilisk is one of their natural predators. Nothing else could have driven them out like that. "A basilisk," Dumbledore murmured, stroking his beard. "Fortunate we didn't meet the creature itself. That would have been unpleasant." Snape stepped forward to inspect the skin. "Good quality," he said, "far superior to the fragments from the African tree snake. Vizette, see if you can break it down." "All right." Vizette moved up and cast a cutting charm as he normally would. "Diffindo." A muted sound answered him, and only faint white marks appeared on the skin. A basilisk is an exceptionally dangerous creature, bred by dark wizards, optimized for specific traits, and its magical resistance was enormous, possibly even greater than dragon scales. The regular cutting charm simply wouldn't do much. Vizette hesitated. The obvious answer was to use ancient magic power, improved cutting charm, elementary, but he wasn't sure what would happen if he unleashed that particular magic on such a specimen. Some magical creatures reacted badly to stronger, older magics. Others barely noticed. He thought of the mandrake he had been tending, quiet and cooperative during repotting, and decided to be careful. Snape wanted to replace the African tree snake fragments with this skin, so minimizing risk was important. Based on his study of the improved cutting charm, Vizette adjusted his approach. He blended the charm's penetrative characteristics with the usual diffindo, modulated the wand movement to layer multiple subtle castings into one, and slowed the flow of magic so all the strikes would hit at once. He steadied his wrist and whispered, "Diffindo." A crisp, continuous hiss cut through the cave. A clean, straight incision appeared along the skin. "Interesting technique," Dumbledore said, thoughtful. Though it was a single incantation, he's effectively performing multiple castings by varying his gesture. Snape nodded, and he controlled the tempo so the hits arrived simultaneously. He's been practicing. Dumbledore's eyes twinkled. "Seems you've been training him well." "That's me helping him build experience," Snape replied, his expression sour. "It's a process." Dumbledore smiled, sly as ever. "The cutting charm is about gentle separation, control, and precision. He's already got that down. With a little more, he might refine it into a more effortless method." Snape gave a short, cold laugh. Dumbledore's praise made him bristle, but the headmaster continued, teasing in his usual way. "Ah, the man many a dark wizard feared." "Do you mean me?" Snape asked dryly. "Not giving out Slytherin points anymore. He's long graduated," Dumbledore said with a shrug. "But Vizette had some interesting thoughts on the dark arts back then." "Good." Snape's eyes narrowed as he walked over to Vizette. "Stop dawdling. How long do you plan to waste here? Shall I prepare a bed if you want to stay the night?" Vizette lowered his wand, bright-eyed, and a notebook appeared in his hand as he made a note. Dumbledore, meanwhile, unwrapped a lemon sherbet, popped it into his mouth, and casually conjured a fat rat, sending it skittering down the tunnel. "I'll only say this once," he remarked idly. Snape's tone went serious. "First, follow me and say it aloud. Sectum sempra." Vizette pressed his wand to his temple and ran the spell in his head, rehearsing the intonation, mouth shape, and pronunciation until it felt right. Then he spoke it clearly, "Sectum sempra." "Don't forget the control and precision you use in the cutting charm," Snape said in a low voice. "Focus your attention, condense your magic to a single point, then extend from that point into a line." Vizette took notes as Snape explained. The principle of the Sectum Sempra charm resembled the improved cutting charm in many ways. The application was different, but the core idea, consolidated power, steady direction, was the same. If there were gaps, he could review them later with mental magic, or ask Snape for more instruction. By now, he had learned to anticipate Snape's terse style. Snape moved to the far side of the shed skin, Vizette following. "I'll only show this once," he raised his wand. "From here, cut all the way to the tail. Watch closely. Sectum sempra." 305. Snape's sharp edge. Seeing Snape take up his wand, Vizette held his guardian's meditation and watched every movement with complete focus. In that instant, Snape seemed filled with a peculiar coldness, an iron blood chill like a sword that had drunk its fill. Vizette inhaled sharply. Watching him now felt like watching a swordsman whose blade had been fully revealed. Even Sectum Sempra carried that same sensation, like the projection of a sword's aura. Sectum Sempra. Snape's voice was soft and clipped, yet each word carried explosive force and an unyielding will. It was a contradiction in itself. Sectum Sempra was not a soft spell, but Snape's delivery was precise, controlled. He raised his wrist with the lightest of motions. His wand traced a line, and an invisible, icy blade spread from point to line. The whistle, short and irresistible, sounded like bamboo in the wind. The snake skin shuddered and split cleanly into two halves, falling silently aside. Snape lowered his wand as if sheathing a sword and resumed the gloomy composure Vizette knew so well. "This skin isn't very tough. I'll give you 10 minutes, Snape said, lowering his wand. "Also, rein in the dark arts in your Sectum Sempra. Use control and precision to strip away everything but the sharpness. I want fragments of snakeskin, not fragments saturated with the dark arts." Vizette's earlier judgment had been right. Snape prized the purity of the snakeskin itself, without extra taint. That cutting had been blindingly fast, an elegant stroke worth savoring. Vizette exhaled slowly and, still using mental magic, replayed Snape's casting, the posture, the tone, the spirit of the spell. A realization struck him. The Snape he'd just seen matched closely the Snape in Hagrid's memories. If so, maybe he could use those memories as a fulcrum to manifest Sectum Sempra. All roads, he thought, led to the same core. His studies in mental magic might help him learn other spells. Snape had ordered him to cut the skin quickly. He needed a clever method. Vizette closed his eyes, pressed his wand to his temple, and let the Obscurus core pump ancient magic into him. He used that power to cast a memory extraction charm, linking memories with ancient energy to create unusual effects. He had used a similar trick once when teaching Luna, using a pensieve to foster empathy. He pulled forth memories of young Snape, then recent ones, and finally the abstract concept of a sword aura. He braided them together like twisting a wick until they formed a single, sharpened image. When he opened his eyes, an unfamiliar chill gleamed there. Snape glanced at him, frowning, then raising an eyebrow as if sensing something odd. Vizette's wand felt less like a wand and more like a blade in his hand. He adjusted his stance, planted himself like a pine, and swung his wand from low to high, slicing a clean line through the air. Sectum Sempra. Vizette's tone was brighter than Snape's, but carried the same ruthless edge. The whistle returned, longer, wilder, less constrained. Where Snape's cast had only made the skin tremble, Vizette's reached the bones. Bones and skin that touched the spell were cleaved into fragments. Surrounding bones clattered and rolled away like wind-blown debris. Bone dust danced through the cavern. The massive skin shrank as it was cut into small, regular pieces that fell to the floor. Snape's brow tightened. The look in his eyes, an odd mix of disgust and nostalgia, mirrored the feeling of his own Sectum Sempra. Dumbledore, sensing it too, came close and murmured, "On him, I seem to see you as a student." "Heh! Is that something to be proud of?" Snape snorted, arms crossed, fingers tapping his arm like a counting of old grievances. Dumbledore said nothing more. Vizette kept the rhythm, swinging his arm again and again, casting blade after blade of energy until the skin was reduced to fragments. Only when the task was done did he let out a long breath and press his wand to his temple to restore the memories he had braided together. Pain flared through the fingers holding the wand. He looked down to see deep cuts on his index finger and thumb, blood seeping out as he relaxed his grip. "Reparo," he cried with his other hand, mending the wounds in an instant. "Using tricks like that has its price," Snape said as he stepped forward and glanced at the faint, white marks where the wounds had been. "Took you about 6 minutes. I can barely give you a passing grade." Vizette inclined his head. "Understood. I'll practice this and won't rely on shortcuts." If he could cast Sectum Sempra with Snape's effortless control, the surrounding bone wouldn't have been affected. Vizette knew that. Dumbledore, walking over, said, "I thought you might give him 80. There's another door at the end of this tunnel." "I tried to open it, but ordinary methods won't work. This is Salazar Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. Parseltongue is likely required," Snape replied. "Collect the fragments, brush the bone dust off, and we'll press on," Snape added. Vizette nodded, waved his wand, and gathered the skin fragments into the bag Dumbledore had conjured. "Scourgify," he muttered, cleansing the pieces of bone powder. After the first pass, he reached into the bag to check for any remaining dust. The moment his fingers touched the fragments, the wizard's combat manual that sat nearby flung itself open and pages began to flutter. The ancient magic he had been channeling, what he called ancient magic power, shifted and flowed, being drawn into the combat manual. With that infusion, the pages whipped more frantically. The content would take time to reveal itself. Vizette had seen this before and accepted it calmly. He closed the bag, followed Dumbledore deeper into the tunnel, and left the manual to digest the power it had absorbed. 306. Curse? While Vizette was slicing the basilisk skin, Headmaster Dumbledore had already scouted the way ahead. The only obstacle was a large stone door, so the path forward was relatively easy. Vizette asked, "Headmaster Dumbledore, Professor Snape, if we encounter the basilisk later, should we just kill it straight away?" With the orb of light bobbing above his head, Dumbledore, looking for all the world like an old man taking a garden stroll, asked leisurely, "And what would you do then?" "I've been practicing a Parseltongue whistle," Vizette replied. I never really tried to lure the hair out. Maybe now's the time to test it. We didn't even know the giant snake was a basilisk at first, Dumbledore said. Now that we do, we can focus on finding the heir. Then let Colin Creevey disappear for a while, Snape said coldly. It's not too late for Professor McGonagall to arrange that. Dumbledore waved a hand. Bring panic back to the school? I'd rather not. Or let him spread the story, that he escaped death by his own ability, Snape suggested, in a tone carefully measured. Gryffindors are particularly gullible about that, aren't they? That's not a bad idea. Dumbledore nodded. It would take the sting out of the Chamber of Secrets, turn it into a joke rather than a terror. Someone who likes to show off. They even broke Colin's camera, Snape continued. In any case, the heir must be itching to prove himself. Should we change the writing on the wall, then? Vizette raised his wand. I remember how the original message read. He waved his wand and traced 2 lines of text in the air. The Chamber of Secrets has been opened. Enemies of the heir beware. Just rearrange it a bit, he said, and with a light flick the letters rose and recombined into a new sentence. Sneaky rat creep and harm a poor feline. Is that the best deed to show off? I couldn't make everything correspond perfectly, Vizette added. I had to add a few letters. Dumbledore and Snape exchanged odd looks but said nothing. Vizette, noticing their expressions, frowned. Headmaster? Professor Snape? Is something wrong? Cast a Patronus, Snape said. All right. Vizette drew the circle with practiced ease. Expecto Patronum, the familiar warm feeling spread through him as before. Dumbledore and Snape exchanged another glance, this time with a look of relief, and their faces smoothed back into neutrality. Snape curled a lip. Why would you do that? Vizette explained. Luna told me the hare who left those words probably wanted to show off his identity. If he left such indelible writing on the wall, he wants everyone to remember and fear him. Fear is his delight, Dumbledore murmured, stroking his beard. Replying in his own language, that's a good idea. If he can't help himself, he'll come back soon to summon the basilisk, Dumbledore went on. And then we'll have a chance to deal with it when it appears. At the end of the cave tunnel stood a massive carved stone door, its surface coiled with giant snakes. Emeralds were set into the snake's eyes, lending a disturbingly lifelike air. Vizette hissed in Parseltongue, open. The carved snakes seemed to stir. They circled once along the door's face, then melted away into the stone as the door slowly swung inward. Beyond it lay a hall as vast as the Great Hall, filled with a misty green light that pressed on the senses. Pillars carved in the likeness of snakes rose along the room, each with emeralds in their eyes that cast the eerie glow. Dumbledore once more used Transfiguration to scout ahead and reported no immediate danger. At the far end of the Chamber of Secrets stood a colossal statue, a solemn, austere likeness of Salazar Slytherin. Let's search around, Dumbledore suggested, and the 3 of them split up to examine the hall. Vizette lit the mental map he kept in his mind and collected ancient magic power as he walked. He used Parseltongue to probe the walls and floors for any hidden entrances, hissing until his throat felt raw, but found nothing. When they regrouped, Dumbledore asked, Any discoveries? Snape shook his head and looked toward Vizette. Vizette answered honestly, I tried Parseltongue, but there was no reaction. Maybe it needs a specific password, not just open. Then all that remains is Salazar Slytherin's statue, Dumbledore said, moving forward. Quite magnificent. Thinking of getting one for Hogwarts? Snape said dryly. A statue of the great Dumbledore, like the one at the Ministry? I have no such plans, Dumbledore said, waving it away. I suspect Fudge wouldn't sleep until the statue fell on him. Vizette circled the statue, drawing more ancient magic power and continuing to try Parseltongue just in case. The wizard's combat manual in his mind stirred, and at last one of its pages changed, revealing new content. Vizette focused and read a single simple word that felt like a name, something like thunder, incantation. Salazar Slytherin had mentioned that word before. Vizette remembered Slytherin saying that once he passed the test, he would gain control of the incantation. The tests, Slytherin had said, involved acquiring body fragments or winning trust. Could the basilisk skins they had collected be counted as body fragments? A sudden image flashed across his mind, a skull with its mouth open and a fat python emerging from it. The image moved. The python crawled out until it had fully exited the skull. Cracks spidered across the bone, starting at the jaws and spreading toward the eye sockets. 307. Entering the school hospital again before the Christmas holiday. By the time the python had fully emerged from the skull, the bone was already webbed with fine cracks. The snake looked back at the skull, now streaked from pale to a deep, granite gray. With a resounding crack, it lashed its tail and shattered the skull. The fragments turned to dust and blew away in a swirl. At the same instant, Vizette felt a rush of memories slam into him. The flood of images was so overwhelming, he went dizzy and stumbled backward. Just as he was about to collapse, someone caught him. Snape's forehead was slick with sweat, and the whites of his eyes were bloodshot. His left arm trembled, but he managed to grip Vizette's shoulder and stop him from falling. Dumbledore took over at once, waving his wand to conjure a soft bed so Vizette could be laid down. He asked gravely, "Has the dark mark flared up again?" Snape nodded, pulling his sleeve back to check. Much more intense than before, like the Crucio, only for an instant. The dark mark on his left arm was as black and sharp as ink, then began to fade. Snape twisted his arm and watched it as it receded until it matched his skin again. "It's gone, exactly the same as last time." "Vizette, what is happening?" Dumbledore's eyes stayed on the boy on the bed. His expression was a mix of concern and something deeper. "Again and again, this keeps happening." "Then it depends on whether you are willing to believe him, Severus," Dumbledore said, meaningfully. "At least I am." Snape wiped his forehead with the back of his hand. "Even if you might die because of it, even if he might give you a killing curse from behind?" "If that is my destiny," Dumbledore smiled gently. "Have I ever told you that? To the well-organized mind, death is but the next great adventure." "An adventure?" Snape's mouth twitched with a scornful half-smile. "Where will she venture to? If death is an adventure, does it end? And when you get to the end, will we meet again?" "I don't know," Dumbledore admitted. "Perhaps it was once possible, but now I don't know. You actually want to try, then?" Snape's voice held a note of mockery. Dumbledore smiled a little. "And you?" Snape let his eyelids drop. He didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked practically, "What now? Back to the surface? Or explore further?" Dumbledore looked around, raised his wand, and checked the statues one more time before deciding. "Back to the surface first. If we want to solve this, we'll need a parcel mouth. Maybe we can lure the snake out of its hole and force the air to reveal the secret himself." Skelegro tasted foul, and the soul-soothing potion was worse. The Skelegro burned like swallowing a mouthful of glowing coals. The soul-soothing potion felt like a handful of ice-cold slime scraping down his throat. After taking both, Harry felt trapped between fire and ice, sometimes unbearably hot, sometimes chilled to the bone. The whole experience was agonizing. He didn't even remember drifting off. He only knew his arm was racked with the sensation of being stabbed and twisted by a blade. Madame Pomfrey had explained that the feeling came from the bones growing and that the soul-soothing potion would help him sleep and dull the pain. The Skelegro had done its job. He could feel the bones knitting. Eventually, he fell into a fitful, hazy sleep. Then a new, sharper pain woke him, the kind that comes when a bone finally sets. Shadowy figures fluttered at the edges of his vision. With a muttered curse, he squeezed his eyes shut and exhausted, drifted back into a restless sleep. Snape's voice was imitated to perfection, but the expression on the imitator's face was all mockery and sarcasm. Madame Pomfrey arched an eyebrow and looked at Dumbledore. He was momentarily at a loss, glancing out at the night sky. "Poppy, it's very late. You should get some rest soon." "Guess who made me get up in the middle of the night?" she sighed. "You two should be getting some rest as well. Out, I'm closing the door." Dumbledore did not budge. A small smile lingered at the corners of his mouth. "Poppy, I still want to talk with Harry for a little while." Madame Pomfrey shot him a glare. "He drank a bone growth potion. His bones need to keep growing tonight. Come back in the morning." Dumbledore froze, and Snape's lips curled into a sneer. When Vizette's consciousness returned, he was still inside the Chamber of Secrets. Dumbledore and Snape were gone. In front of him stood a wizard in dark green robes, clutching a great, ancient book. The man's face was deeply set and as pale as parchment, someone who spent his life indoors, buried in study, his skin as if glazed in white. cultivating 2 roosters in a purely stone basement, waiting half a year. No cockatrice egg resulted. Subsequent toad incubation impossible, the wizard muttered as he turned pages. Putting the research together with the chamber's location, Vizette recognized the memory he had entered. Salazar Slytherin's. This memory was invaluable. It documented the process of producing a basilisk. According to the library, a basilisk begins with a cockatrice egg, which must then be incubated by a toad. The real problem was obtaining a cockatrice egg. Salazar had asked the same question and had tried to make one by magical means. Vizette watched as Salazar scribbled, devised experiment after experiment. The notes were exhaustive. 12th experiment, combine physical traits of roosters and hens by magic, stimulate with potion, feed 7 days. 36th experiment, magical suggestion on roosters, alter routines to cause confusion, maintain vigor with potions. 78th experiment, garnet rumored to have fertility properties, place in rooster, feed mashed mandrake. More experiments followed, mixing ritual magic, transfiguration, dark arts, and, importantly, bloodline magic. Vizette had little familiarity with bloodline magic and committed the pages to memory, intending to study them later. The chamber filled with the detritus of that research, shelves, desks, piles of notes, even a chicken coop. Finally, Salazar combined his previous trials into a comprehensive procedure that unified ritual workings, alchemy, and bloodline lore. 181st experiment, extract the essence of a rooster, place it in a garnet vessel. Alchemy, transform sunstone, flint, sulfur, lodestone, and green vitriol, place them in the garnet vessel, seal with mandrake root paste. After 7 days, an egg-shaped object appears in the garnet container. Inject fresh thestral blood into it, transfer the object into the rooster's body, continue cultivation for 7 weeks. Introduce an Irish phoenix to live with the flock. Eliminate other roosters with the killing curse. Kill the Irish phoenix with the killing curse. The rooster then displays signs of laying an egg. Salazar watched the brightly colored rooster grow dim, finally ash-gray, until it crumbled away and only an oval cockatrice egg remained. The shell was a ghastly ash-white veined with red lines like exposed blood vessels. It even seemed to pulse. Salazar nodded and recorded, "The rooster successfully completed production, laying a cockatrice egg." Vizette, lacking background in bloodline magic, tried to piece the process together from what he knew of ritual techniques and magical crafting. The use of fresh thestral blood, the introduction and slaughter of the Irish phoenix, and the repeated casting of the killing curse were all methods of imbuing the egg with the quality of death. The result made itself known in the basilisk. Not only did it have lethal fangs, but its gaze could also kill. Everything about its creation had been saturated with death. The fact that indirect exposure to a basilisk's gaze produced petrification rather than outright death seemed tied to the garnet container and the accompanying stones, sunstone, flint, and so on. The full sequence of Salazar's work demanded study. Vizette knew he would glean deeper truths as he accumulated more magical knowledge. Watching Salazar repeat the killing curse many times broadened Vizette's understanding in unwelcome ways. He learned to recognize the curse's manifestations, a blinding, chilling green light accompanied by an almost inaudible whisper, fast, malevolent, the murmur of death. From repeated observation he confirmed the whisper's existence. The killing curse, like the Imperious, was an unforgivable. Both were easy to utter. The correct incantation released them. But the killing curse differed in that it required the caster to pour emotion into the spell, a fierce, actual desire for the victim's death. That violent intent was why it was so darkly forbidden. Salazar's posture taught another detail. To cast the killing curse effectively, one needed a steady aim despite the wand trembling. Salazar gripped his wand so tightly the veins on the back of his hand stood out. Yet when the green light sprang forth, the tip of his wand still pitched upward slightly. Vizette absorbed those gestures and the rhythm of the curse. The whisper, the requirement of murderous intent, the physical strain, all of it settled into his memory as surely as the recorded experiments. 309. Curse contract with the basilisk. After successfully creating the rooster egg, Salazar immediately began the incubation process. Vizette could tell that Salazar had folded everything he had learned from his previous 180 experiments into this 181st. He continued to feed the toad thestral blood to amplify the egg's affinity for death. Salazar had also redesigned the original chicken coop, blending ritual magic with alchemy to create a new hatchery centered on an alchemical magic array. Vizette, drawing on the books stored in his mind, analyzed each step with care and finally understood Salazar's intention. The incubation was, in fact, a form of biological alchemy. Knowledge was vast. Biological alchemy and bloodline magic were fields Vizette only partially understood, but now he committed every detail to memory so he could study and research them properly later. As the experiment progressed, new memory fragments surfaced. In them, the toad gradually changed. It seemed to be undergoing some kind of magical conversion with the rooster egg. Its skin paled, its movements slowed, and it took on the inert look of a gray-white statue. The egg, by contrast, gained the color that drained from the toad, as if a thick layer of skin wrapped itself around it, hiding its original pallor and the red veins beneath. When the toad finally turned to stone, the egg's biological alchemy completed. It had become a basilisk egg. Its shell was covered with vibrant patterns, the same green hues that matched the snakeskin markings Vizette had seen in the cave tunnels. Salazar altered the alchemical array into a ritual array. He waved his wand. A silver-blue light poured from the tip. As a former guardian, Salazar also commanded ancient magic, and he used that power now to nourish the basilisk egg, continuing its incubation. Vizette noticed that while he fed the egg with ancient magic, Salazar simultaneously employed mental magic to establish a form of communication. The old guardian's notes recorded, adding ancient magic power, guiding the basilisk egg's instinct to absorb ancient magic power. As the ancient magic and the mental link increased, the egg began to respond, trembling more frequently, establishing magic communication with the basilisk to gain the basilisk's trust, preparing for the formation of the command. Watching the entries, Vizette realized, so Dean Slytherin's aim was to obtain a command. He ran the word over in his head. What exactly is a command? He uses the word formation. Could it be a contract? Is a command a kind of binding agreement? He pulled together the clues: ancient magic, mental magic, communication, trust, and then he added another piece: Parseltongue. Dean Slytherin's own talent for Parseltongue might play a role. Since the basilisk is still at Hogwarts, I'm bound to encounter it someday. By using ancient magic and then forming a magical connection through Parseltongue and mental magic, the encounter could be made far easier. A sudden thought struck him. The mandrake he had watered with ancient magic, could he form a similar command with it? He checked himself. Magical plants were not the same as creatures. One could not recklessly transpose techniques without understanding the differences. Magic held endless possibilities, but it also carried equal danger. Even relatively safe branches like charms could go horribly wrong if a syllable were mispronounced. Professor Flitwick had told the cautionary tale of a wizard, Barufio, who mispronounced a spell and ended up with his ribs broken by a wild bull. For a wizard, ordinary injuries could often be repaired. Bones regrown with Skelegro, for example, but some magical accidents caused lasting disabilities. Anthony had once told stories about a legendary auror, Alastor Mad-Eye Moody, who lost an eye while pursuing a dark wizard and had to use a magical prosthetic. According to Anthony, Moody's magical eye could rotate a full 360 degrees to spot enemies from any angle. Vizette took comfort in that he was at a school. When he had questions or wished to test an experimental idea, the professors could offer guidance. Even if none had faced the exact same issue, their experience could provide inspiration and greatly reduce the chance of catastrophic mistakes. Just as the basilisk broke from its shell, the memory fragments abruptly cut off. Some magical restriction must have prevented Vizette from witnessing the entire formation of the command. He felt a twinge of regret, but the knowledge he had already gleaned from Salazar's memories was immense, enough to occupy him for a long time. As the fragments dissolved, Vizette experienced the familiar sensation of weightlessness, as if he were falling through darkness. He'd felt this before. It meant he was regaining consciousness. He relaxed, letting his thoughts drift. Memories of Christmas and summer holidays surfaced, small domestic details and dreamlike scenes that were like quicksand, vague and slippery when he tried to focus, serene if he let them be. He felt, oddly and warmly, the Ravenclaw common room, the view beyond its windows toward the dark silhouette of the forbidden forest. He felt a thestral burst silently from the trees, flap up into the sky, and then dive back into the canopy. He felt the greenhouses at Hogwarts, the magical plants thriving and swaying as they drank in the morning dew. The images brushed past him like a feather on a current, and he floated toward waking with them. 310. Where is Vizette? Devon, especially the village of Ottery St. Catchpole, where Xenophilius lived, kept a fairly mild climate even in late November, with cold winds and rain only occasionally. The Highlands of Scotland were another matter, much colder, the mornings sharp with the last assault of chill before sunrise. Ravenclaw Tower rose high into those winds. Gusts scoured the stone and rattled panes, trying to pry the warmth from within. Luna woke with a soft whimper, curling deeper under her quilt. She had slipped a foot outside the covers in her sleep and immediately drew it back in, luxuriating in the sudden warmth. Her eyelids fluttered, long lashes trembling. She murmured and yawned, sensing something odd in the air. She rolled over, rubbed her eyes and opened them slowly, a faint puzzled look in their pale depths. Disappeared? She said to herself, as if answering a private question. Like quicksand? Then what should I do? She continued in that same distant half-whisper. Luna closed her eyes for a moment, listening. Perhaps do nothing. Only then can I dream, she breathed, voice almost a thread of music. Outside, the wind made a steady whoosh against the tower. In her mind, it became a prelude, and she let herself empty her thoughts until that peculiar falling feeling rose up again. What an interesting feeling, but I should get up. School was colder than home, so the clothes Xenophilius had packed were thicker than what Luna normally wore. Amika Miller, who slept nearby, stirred and mumbled groggily, "Luna, are you going to the greenhouse again?" "Yes, good morning," Luna answered, leaning in with her usual gentle smile. "Good." Amika's voice trailed off like a lullaby, and she slid back into sleep. Luna had been waking early every day since she was little. It was a habit she had brought from Ottery St. Catchpole. After a quick wash and tidy, she padded downstairs. The common room was quiet. Only a few students slumped over tables, books used as pillows, pages smudged where they'd been drooled on. He seems to have overslept too, she thought. At the window, she looked out toward the dark shape of the forbidden forest and occasionally glanced at the staircase on the other side of the room, waiting in that gentle, patient way she always did. Birds lifted from the tree line in scattered flocks. The thestrals, too, began to stir, ghostly silhouettes leaping up and falling back into the shadowed trees. That feeling lingered with her. Luna liked to clear her mind in the greenhouse and let herself experience it, that sensation of floating in darkness. Hannah, who had come with her, watched Luna drift and finally asked, a little concerned, "What's wrong? You seem different today." Luna blinked and answered, "I feel like a flobberworm, flying with the wind in complete darkness." "Flobberworm?" Hannah frowned. "Is that a magical creature?" Luna smiled and described it in her soft voice. "It looks like a cloak, very light, like a dandelion. It can go anywhere." Neville, who loved the greenhouse and came often to tend the plants, put down a watering can and, worried, asked, "Speaking of which, where did Vizette go?" "You two usually come together," he said, worry plain on his face. "Did something happen? I heard Colin say the person who attacked Filch's cat showed up again." "Appeared again!" Hannah covered her mouth, then remembered and pulled her hand away quickly. "What happened?" Neville scratched his head. "Well, Headmaster Dumbledore went over too. He seemed to be checking everything. When I passed them, I heard a bit. It seemed they said the person wanted to play a prank, not that they were an heir. He attacked Colin because he wanted to destroy Colin's camera." "Dumbledore went to Colin?" Luna, listening, tilted her head. "Yes," Neville tried to recall. "Dumbledore brought the camera, but it was broken. If it was just a prank, Vizette should be all right, right?" Hannah's face eased into a worried hope. "Luna, why don't we go look for him?" "I want to help too," Neville added quickly. "Vizette's helped me so much. He can't be in trouble." "Don't worry, he won't be in trouble," Luna assured them. "Let's go see him." "Do you know where he is?" both asked. "He should be resting in the hospital wing," Luna replied with a nod. "Even if a flobberworm can fly with the wind, it still needs good rest." They thanked Professor Sprout quickly and hurried to the hospital wing. Madame Pomfrey stood by Harry's bed, holding his arm to check it. Looks good. Try moving it. Do you feel any discomfort? Harry bent his arm cautiously, flexed his hand, and shook it out. I'm fine. Can I be discharged? Eat some breakfast first, then you can go, Madame Pomfrey said, setting a bowl of porridge down. If you feel the least bit strange, come back at once. Luna bowed slightly. Madame Pomfrey, we came to see Vizette. How did you know he was here? Madame Pomfrey asked briefly, a little surprised, then led them toward the row of curtained beds. He's in that bed, probably just run down from overwork. Since you're his friends, tell him to rest properly. I will, Luna said, and gently drew back the curtain. Vizette lay pale and still under the blanket. Neville stepped forward, reached out a finger, and poked Vizette's arm. He's still soft, he breathed, relieved. Then it's just overwork, Hannah said with a sigh. Good thing it's nothing worse. Just then Vizette's eyes opened. He looked at them and said in a quiet voice, Good morning. Good morning, Luna answered, blinking. Madame Pomfrey told me to keep an eye on you. Make sure you get enough rest. 311. Use the subjects you are good at to understand magic. When Luna spoke, Vizette remembered what had happened the previous night and gave a wry smile. It was just an accident. I've been resting fine. Dawn light crept up outside the window. Vizette pulled out his wand, aimed it at his chest, and muttered, Amato, animo, animato, animagus. He lay back down on the bed, just as Madame Pomfrey came in with a bowl of porridge. Of course, being ill is an accident. Who would happen to want to be sick? She chided lightly. Did you drink too much of Baruffio's brain elixir? A coup! The Weasley twins sneezed in unison. George's eyes gleamed with mischief. Sneezing until your nose bleeds. Would the effect of a skiving snack box be good enough? Fred brightened. Great idea, especially in potions. Snape would love to see us like that. Write it down. After checking that both patients were recovered, Madame Pomfrey hurried out of the hospital wing, balancing several empty potion bottles. Vizette accepted the porridge and looked at Luna and the others. Has everyone had breakfast? Go eat quickly. I feel pretty good. Last night really was an accident. Speaking of accidents, Neville told us Colin ran into trouble too, Hannah said. His camera got smashed by the same thing that petrified Filch's cat last time. Ah? Harry, spooning the last of his porridge into his mouth, frowned, about to ask. Dumbledore appeared at the entrance of the hospital wing and moved straight toward Harry. Good morning, Harry. How is your arm? Neville shrank back a little, worry creasing his face as Dumbledore approached. Headmaster! Harry set down his bowl and flexed his arm, clenching his fist as he had shown Madame Pomfrey earlier. It's completely healed, Dumbledore smiled. That's wonderful. Would it be convenient to have a word in private? Of course. Harry tumbled out of bed and shoved his feet into his shoes. Headmaster, where shall we talk? Once Harry and Dumbledore left, Neville visibly relaxed and let out a long sigh. Good thing the headmaster didn't scold me. I thought I'd let something slip. Did I cause trouble? Hannah fretted. I didn't mean to. Don't be so nervous, Vizette said, setting his porridge down. There isn't any air business, just someone making a fuss to get attention. Isn't that worth publicizing? If Dumbledore came to find you, it's likely to reassure students so they can feel safer, Vizette went on. That's what matters. That sounds right, Neville said, scratching his head and forcing a smile. Hearing you say that makes me feel much better. I'm just so afraid of losing points. Professor Snape deducts points if I use wrong ingredients, and I stutter the incantations so my magic falters. His voice trailed off and his expression sank. Professor Sprout praises you a lot, Luna piped up. She says she's seen many Gryffindors, and you're one of the most special. Yes, yes, Hannah agreed quickly. Professor Sprout says that all the time. You should remember that, Luna added. She said you're patient, careful with every magical plant, and you nurture them with care. Neville and Hannah's faces warmed. They glanced at each other and found their cheeks both flushed. Yes, Professor Sprout praises you, Vizette said with a smile. Maybe start with your favorite subject and use what you know to expand into other kinds of magic. That's what I do, he continued. I have some insight into transfiguration, so when I learn other magic, I combine it with what I understand from transfiguration. Use transfiguration to understand other magic. Neville and Hannah looked puzzled. What about us? What should we do? Vizette thought for a moment. Right. Remember the tickling charm Professor Flitwick taught recently? Of course. Neville rubbed his head, embarrassed. But I still can't cast it well. That's okay. He only taught it recently, Vizette said, waving a hand. Let's revisit what Professor Flitwick said. The incantation is rictusempra. The trick is to add a slight tremble at the end of the word. And the wand movement, light and rhythmic, like mimicking a tickle, Luna added. Neville and Hannah nodded. Professor Flitwick said that. Come on then, Vizette said, raising his wand. Imagine lightly waving the wand as if you were in the greenhouse, watering between 2 rows of magical plants. A breeze blows and the leaves brush your legs. That sensation is what Flitwick meant by tickling. Elf, come, he called. A small iron cage flew in through the window and landed in Vizette's hands. A house elf inside gripped the bars and regarded them all solemnly. Neville and Hannah stepped forward and cast rictusempra. 2 faint silver sparks shot from their wands. The elf cracked a grin, chuckled a few times, then quickly resumed its reserved posture, hardly affected. Neville and Hannah looked a little disappointed. It's the same as in class, Neville muttered. Flitwick said this charm is all about feeling, Vizette explained. You need to be light like a breeze. Picture the greenhouse again, the wind through the leaves, the green tips brushing your legs. The pair's faces brightened at the visualization. How did you feel in the greenhouse this morning? Vizette asked. Relaxed, Neville said. Is this using herbology to understand other magic? Just an example that's close by, Vizette said. Hannah, what did you feel? Relaxed, happy. She answered uncertainly. Keep that mindset. Imagine the leaves brushing your legs, and then try again. Neville breathed out slowly. Leaves tickling my legs. Relaxed, happy. Hannah mirrored the motion, mimicking the rustling leaves as she flicked her wand. Rictusempra. This time, 2 silver lights burst from their wand tips, far brighter than before. The cage was small, and the elf had nowhere to hide. It was struck squarely by the tickling charm. The elf's stern face melted into helpless laughter as it clutched at its sides, giggling uncontrollably. Neville and Hannah exchanged astonished, delighted looks as the charm finally took hold. The house elf immediately burst into uncontrollable laughter, and within seconds it collapsed, trembling on the floor and letting out sharp cackles. Finite incantatem. Vizette waved his wand and broke the tickling charm. Only then did the house elf straighten into a prone position inside the iron cage, gasping for air. The effect is really that obvious, Neville and Hannah said, inspecting their wands with a mix of disbelief and excitement. Headmaster Dumbledore once said every wizard's talent shows itself differently, Vizette said. You can use that idea to understand other spells. And Petrificus Totalis, Hannah began. We learned about Devil's Snare last year. Can you? You can use Devil's Snare to understand Petrificus Totalis, Vizette finished with a snap. Try it often. Petrificus Totalis, Neville's voice went up a notch. Understand it through Devil's Snare? Yes, Vizette snapped his fingers. And not just Devil's Snare. Combine it with other magical plants. There are so many magical plants in the greenhouse, Luna breathed, eyes distant as if she could already smell the soil. They're like pigments. Mix them, and you paint a picture. Exactly, Vizette agreed. Treat them like pigments and paint what you want. All right, Neville said, trying to sound resolute. I'll work hard. This is only a little of my experience, Vizette added. How you do it exactly is up to you. You'll have to put in the work. Your herbology is excellent, Neville said. When you find something new, tell me. We learn by sharing. I will, Hannah promised quickly. I'll tell you for sure. Luna squeezed Hannah's hand. Don't put so much pressure on yourself. The most important thing is happiness. Vizette seems to be happy every day. Vizette nodded at Luna. Studying and living well both make me happy. He continued, asking questions is important. When I use transfiguration to understand spells, I often ask Professor Flitwick for his opinion. Class is a great opportunity, but you have to ask. Professor Flitwick has so many students, he can't tell who truly understands unless you speak up, Vizette said. And like Luna said, don't pressure yourself. Do what you enjoy and try things to see what fits. Neville hesitated. If we ask questions, Professor Flitwick really won't get angry? Of course not. Vizette shook his head. He's a very good professor. All the professors at Hogwarts are very good. All right, You should be on your way now. If you need breakfast, have some, Madame Pomfrey said as she returned to the hospital wing. Leave the beds for those who need them. On the way to the Great Hall, Neville and Hannah kept thanking him until Neville's stomach rumbled and everyone laughed. Once inside, Vizette glanced at the House Cup hourglasses. Snape had deducted a total of 150 points the night before, but the Gryffindor hourglass already showed quite a few gems added back. Dumbledore must have worked with Hermione and Ron to return points. The Great Hall buzzed with conversation. Many threads centered on the air of the Chamber of Secrets, most of it teasing and ridicule. The Weasley twins were already putting on a show, clapping and grinning. We're coming clean! We're actually the heir of the Chamber of Secrets. Watch out. Don't make us angry. Snape's point deductions from the previous night were now being used as proof that Colin had indeed gone out and encountered something. Otherwise, he wouldn't have lost house points. Vizette had already had breakfast, but he spread honey on Luna's bread, while Roger Davies explained new tactics for upcoming Quidditch training. With Arsenio Vincent graduated and gone, Roger had completed the captaincy handover and was now the Ravenclaw captain. Beyond drilling new plays, Vizette's team needed to adapt quickly to the new broomstick. After winning the championship last year, Ravenclaw had finally upgraded their equipment, replacing the older broom models with shooting stars. The shooting star performed well, balanced and reliable. It didn't quite match a Nimbus 2001, but it was close to a Nimbus 2000. After testing, Vizette could feel the difference between the older Shooting Star 5 and the newer Shooting Star 7. The 7 was markedly more stable and noticeably faster. That speed let him move across the pitch far more quickly. The spectators weren't just Luna. Many Quidditch fans watched, and rival teams had sent scouts to gather intelligence and plan counters. When Vizette flew so fast he left after images, faces in the crowd went serious. Flint, Slytherin's captain, pointed at Vizette and kept signaling to his two beaters. Oliver Wood, Gryffindor's captain, noticed Flint and scowled. Ah, Flint must be scheming, probably talking about focusing on Vizette or claiming our brooms are faster, stuff like that. Focusing on him might be the right idea, Angelina Johnson said dryly. With the shooting star, he's become a lot harder to handle. Then we'll just have to train harder. Wood rubbed his hands together. Besides, the so-called heir is ridiculous. Training time opens up if that's a joke. Lucky for us, we have Harry, Angelina said. If Harry can find the snitch before Cho Chang, we still have a chance. We just have to be faster. Stop saying odd things, Angelina scolded him with a look. Remember what you said yesterday. Do you know why Harry ended up in the hospital wing? Understood. Understood. Wood flushed and raised his hands. I won't say anything strange anymore. Hufflepuff's captain had the same worries as Wood. He slapped Cedric's shoulder and said seriously, "It's on you. If we end the match quickly, we have a shot." At Vizette's current speed, even if the game runs 20 minutes, it'll be hard to make up the points, even if we get the snitch, the captain warned. Cedric gave a wry smile. I'll do my best. Don't pressure yourself too much, the Hufflepuff captain added quickly. In a real game, anything can happen. 313. I want to see your dream. As the afternoon drew on, thick clouds rolled in, and the sunlight dulled to a silvery gray. The soft, slightly melancholy light was perfect for Quidditch practice. Maybe because they had new broomsticks, the team warmed up and settled into training faster than before. After stretching and a few drills, Roger Davies gathered everyone in the air, reviewed their previous tactics, and began formal tactical exercises. Broomsticks whistled as they cut across the sky. They practiced until noon, then landed together and rested on the grass. Roger clapped to get their attention. Today's practice was effective. Our coordination has improved, and the 7-star sweep is much cleaner, but there are still points to work on. He turned to Cho Chang. Cho, your snitch strategy was good, but it still needs more flexibility. Keep working on it. Cho nodded earnestly. Okay, next time, more turning drills for me. I'll start with those. Good. Roger jotted a note and addressed the keeper, Grant Page. The coordination was more intuitive this time. Still, Grant admitted, scratching his head, my positioning in the air could be better. I keep getting startled when Vizette appears out of nowhere and don't react in time. It's fine. Roger said, waving a hand. If you can defend against Vizette, you'll handle Angelina, Alicia, and the others just fine. Just get more familiar with his moves. He ran through a few more points and finished with a summary. Our next match is against Hufflepuff. If we keep this up, we'll win more comfortably than last year. Keep it up. After practice, the team didn't head straight back to the castle. Several members, Ravenclaws and others, lingered around the grass and the Black Lake, wrapped in thick robes. Vizette and Luna walked along the lakeshore. Bare branches sketched delicate patterns against the sky where most of the leaves had already fallen. They circled the lake once, and Vizette blew out a puff of warm air. If you're cold, we should head back. Luna shook her head and picked up a fresh fallen leaf. She blew warm air at it like Vizette had and puffed her cheeks. See? It's not cold at all. It's rare that it doesn't rain on the weekend. She tucked the leaf into her pocket and suddenly paused. Vizette looked at her. What's wrong? Do you feel unwell? Did you catch a cold? Luna met his eyes and answered seriously. Let's go back. It's nearly lunchtime in the Great Hall. I'm not hungry yet, Vizette smiled. He understood. We just finished training. A bit more walking will stop us from getting sore tomorrow. Luna brightened and matched his pace, skipping like a small, eager rabbit. She must have been warm. Beads of sweat dotted her forehead beneath a purple-pink cotton hat with pom-poms she'd bought last year. She loved the two pom-poms and had even sewn on black thread and tiny dirigible plums to make them look like crumple-horned snorkacks. As she twirled the threads and played with the pink pom-poms, Vizette said, "The Chamber of Secrets business will be settled soon. Then we can go into the Forbidden Forest." "We'll sneak in," Luna said, deliciously delighted. "We have to dodge Mr. Filch, Miss Hagrid's patrol, and pick the right time." Faced with her detailed plan, Vizette didn't want to dampen her enthusiasm. He simply nodded. "Okay, we'll be careful. You told me there are crumple-horned snorkacks in the forest, and that they're your friends. I can meet them too, and the centaur altars, and that mysterious altar George and Fred mentioned. Oh, and there are thestrals. We can look for them." Thestrals? Vizette remembered something. When he'd been in the hospital wing, he'd seen different scenes. Curiosity slipped into his voice. "Luna, did you feel something strange this morning?" "Strange?" Luna tilted her head. "Like I was flying around like a vampire?" "Yes," Vizette nodded. "I felt something too. Guess what I felt?" Luna rubbed the crumple-horned snorkack pom-pom thoughtfully. "Did you see what I saw? Thestrals leaving the forest? Me watering flowers in the greenhouse?" "Maybe it's because we formed another memory bond a couple days ago," Vizette suggested. "A certain thought or feeling might have triggered it." Luna considered that. "Was it because I was worried you were tired and thought you should rest more?" "That could be it." Vizette remembered the moment. "I was thinking about life back home and about looking after the garden with you." "Did you feel unwell? Dizzy or a headache?" he asked. Luna thought a moment. It just felt very odd, like sand held too tightly. If you try to find it on purpose, it slips away. Vizette nodded in agreement. "I felt the same." "If that's so," Luna closed her eyes and swayed a little in the breeze, like a bright sunflower. Vizette stayed close, watching and ready in case she faltered. After a short while, she opened her eyes and sighed softly. "It seems I don't have that feeling anymore." "Maybe it needs a specific condition," Vizette said. "Or maybe it only happens in the morning, like dew that vanishes by noon." "Morning?" Luna's interest lit up again, wine chimes and laughter. "Maybe someday I'll be able to see your dreams, like finding a crumple-horned snorkack in the wild." Vizette hummed, smiling. "Then I'll make sure I get good sleep and try to have a beautiful dream." 314 curse, dark mark. The clouds thickened and the dappled silver-gray light dimmed. Luna, tired from playing, had stuffed her pockets full of brilliantly colored leaves until they bulged. As Vizette and Luna were about to enter the Great Hall, Luna raised an arm and pointed at the sky. "Look, a Patronus!" A tiny silver phoenix swooped down and hovered in front of Vizette, beating its wings. Dumbledore's voice came clear from it. "Vizette, after your lesson with Severus, come to the headmaster's office. The password hasn't changed." That afternoon's private lesson with Snape went deeper into the wide-spectrum antidote and the analogy theory in potions. As its name implied, the wide-spectrum antidote neutralized the toxicity of many common poisons. Its base ingredients were bezoar, mistletoe, and powdered unicorn horn. Modern potions often use the wide-spectrum antidote as a foundation. Add a specific ingredient to target a specific problem. For example, the swelling solution, which reduces swelling caused by magic or toxic potions, was simply the wide-spectrum antidote with a few drops of leech juice added. The idea was to combine the leech's shrinking property with the antidote's detoxifying effect to eliminate certain kinds of swelling. As Vizette grasped the analogy theory more fully, brewing potions felt more engaging, almost like being a bartender, using the wide-spectrum antidote as the base liquor and adding ingredients to craft the right cocktail. He absorbed everything eagerly, tying the lesson to memories from Salazar Slytherin and gaining fresh insights. Even after dinner, on his way to the headmaster's office, his mind was still on mixtures and analogies. "We're here!" Luna's airy voice pulled him back. Vizette realized she had been holding his wrist the whole way, guiding him so he wouldn't trip. "Remember Madame Pomfrey's instructions," Luna teased in an impeccable imitation of the matron's tone. "He's your friend. Tell him to rest. Leave the beds for those who need them." Vizette laughed and promised, "All right, I'll make sure." Inside the headmaster's office, a small silver object lay on the desk, an emblem patterned with mistletoe, oak, and flames, symbols common in ritual magic. Dobby stood nearby, but at the sight of Vizette, he clutched his chest, gave a pitiful "oh," and fainted again. Dumbledore smiled wryly. "Curious. We were speaking quite pleasantly a moment ago. He seems terribly afraid of you." Vizette sat. "Maybe I used his fear as a leverage point to pry into his memories," he said. "It might have left him with a bad impression." He took from his pocket a glass phial with a silver thread swirling inside. "Headmaster, this is Dobby's memory. What explains why he attacked Harry? I haven't had the chance to view it yet, and then—" "No matter, I will study it later." Dumbledore took the phial and pushed the small silver emblem toward Vizette. "Try this. Put your hand on it." Vizette regarded the patterns on the object. "Headmaster, what is this?" "Just try it," Dumbledore urged. "It's a testing charm. If there's no reaction, that's the best outcome." Vizette placed his hand on the emblem. Immediately a pattern impressed itself on his mind, the same python motif that had appeared when he acquired the curse mark. Originally, it had been a sinister combination of skull and serpent. When he received the curse mark, the skull had been shattered by the python, leaving only the snake. Now the python's body was coiled into a cross-like shape, resembling the runic letter Sang. Without the skull, it was less macabre, more like a locked chain. Dumbledore's face tightened. "You have indeed obtained the curse mark," he said quietly. "When did you get it?" Vizette thought back. "At the end of last year, perhaps. When Lord Voldemort attempted to invade my mind, he was driven off, and maybe in that clash the curse mark attached to me." The silver emblem had subtly changed, mirroring the cross-shaped python, its surface engraved with ritual patterns. Dumbledore studied it, a look of thoughtful curiosity replacing his earlier concern. "Perhaps it is one of his power sources," he said. "I supposed it might resemble the dark mark, but I did not expect this. It's more refined, even pleasant to the eye." Vizette's curiosity tugged him. "The dark mark, Headmaster, does it look like this?" He flicked his wand, and a curl of smoke formed in the air, shaping into a skull that gaped open and spat a thick python. Dumbledore nodded slowly. "Yes, that is the dark mark. Perhaps the curse mark you first bore was closer to that form." Dobby stirred, saw the smoke-skulled mark, and fainted again, hitting the floor with a dull thud. Vizette dismissed the smoky image with a wave of his wand. "When I fainted in the Chamber of Secrets," he said, "part of the reason might have been that the mark shifted, becoming a purer python shape." He remembered more of that night and then, looking up at Dumbledore, asked, "You know about the curse mark too. You said that if the emblem shows no reaction, that is the best result. Why is that?" 315. The Contract of the Curse. Dumbledore's expression grew complicated. In a low voice he said, "A curse is an extremely old form of magic, perhaps older than ritual magic itself, older than most recorded traditions. By forming a magical contract, you gain power," he continued, "but you must also live under that contract and accept the limits it imposes." "Magical contract?" Vizette noticed the headmaster's troubled look and studied the silver artifact again. "Is it like an unbreakable vow? If you break it, is the price paid with your life?" That is one of the known penalties, Dumbledore replied with a soft sigh. As for what other consequences might follow, I cannot say with certainty. That's why I don't want you to take on a curse, he added. It may bring some benefits, but it binds you to a contract for life. I'm not indifferent, but you, Vizette, you are still very young. Your possibilities are still open. A curse might not be a gift. It could be a shackle. Vizette pressed on. A lifetime contract. If I break it, will it affect those around me? What exactly did the curse bind me to? This is the first time I've met anything like this, too, Dumbledore admitted. His fingers laced together, his thumbs circled each other. He picked up a pen and some paper from the desk. Normally, to form a cursed contract, you begin with a clearly defined curse, something specific you intend to complete. You need to make that goal your aim, and you must choose a suitable place and a suitable time. As he spoke, he wrote, filling the page with neat strokes. You also need the right ritual magic, proper magical tools, and any auxiliary conditions required. His writing was brisk and steady. Each sentence he spoke appeared on the paper as he finished it. When all the conditions are ready, the curse will call to you. You must answer its summons. Once the curse contract is formed, you must live by it, and the curse will begin to take effect. Vizette listened while mentally reviewing Salazar Slytherin's memory of breeding the basilisk. After sorting through it, he saw clear similarities. Salazar had chosen the Chamber of Secrets as the location. The alchemical circle that became a ritual circle matched the kind of ritual magic Dumbledore described. The call of the curse corresponded to Salazar's communication with the basilisk egg, which then answered by trembling. Vizette looked at the parchment, now full of notes. Headmaster, I want to know the terms of my contract with this curse. I should recreate those steps to learn what it says. Can I understand it that way? I can't guarantee it, Dumbledore said, tapping his finger on the desk. Then, with a casual flick, a teapot, cups, and a plate of pastries appeared. Your situation is unusual. I don't have a better option at present. Recreating the curse formation process will let you gather full information about the curse. It's worth a try. Then I'll try, Vizette murmured. Headmaster Dumbledore, I'll design the whole process first. Please tell me if you see any problems. Dumbledore stroked his beard, smiling. Of course, I'm happy to help. He poured tea. You sound confident. Where will you start? Thank you, Vizette said, taking a cup. It's not exactly confidence. I just think that since this happened, it's best to prioritize solving it. That's certainly sensible. Dumbledore smiled appreciatively and added sugar to his cup. Vizette drew out his notebook and began to write. Suitable location, the 4th floor, the room where the Mirror of Erised used to stand. And the Chamber of Secrets that Salazar Slytherin used should also be checked. We can't overlook either place. Suitable time. My encounter with Lord Voldemort last school year happened at night, and I fainted again last night. Both were around midnight, so we'll set the time at midnight. Ritual magic. He sipped his tea, recalling the ritual circle that transformed from an alchemical one in Salazar's memory. He pressed his wand to his temple, cast a brief charm to access related memories, and sketched the ritual circle, noting points of attention. Then he tapped his wand on the notebook. Geminio, the page duplicated, leaving an exact copy. Headmaster, can this ritual circle be used directly? Dumbledore took the copied page. Very good. Let me see. As Dumbledore examined the diagram, Vizette continued refining the plan, cross-referencing memories, and his understanding of ritual magic. He asked Dumbledore questions to clarify uncertain points so he could better comprehend the curse. During this process, they decided that the required magical tools and auxiliary items were minimal. The only auxiliary item they settled on was a fragment of basilisk shed skin. Vizette also pieced together the sequence of events that led here. First, his encounter with Voldemort last school year, where, by coincidence, he had acquired the curse. Second, the encounter the previous night when touching the basilisk skin fragment had activated his wizard combat guide, causing the curse to be recorded in it. Given everything, he concluded that the basilisk skin fragment was a key condition for recreating the curse contract. With that crucial point confirmed, Vizette had essentially perfected the entire process for forming the curse contract. Using Salazar Slytherin's method of cultivating the basilisk as a reference, and with Dumbledore answering his questions at every step, laying out and completing the plan was not as difficult as he'd feared. 316. The curse contract concluded in 1945. Headmaster Dumbledore set down the page with the ritual magic array and murmured, "It's more complete than I imagined. Apart from a few lines that aren't perfectly smooth, I can't find anywhere to change. I'm not very good at drawing." Vizette smiled faintly, thinking of Luna and how good she was at sketches. Compared to some time ago, his lines had improved. Luna had corrected him many times while he'd been copying the house elves' magic circuits, giving him plenty of practice. "No one's omnipotent," Dumbledore blinked. "About those auxiliary items, do you only need fragments of the basilisk's shed skin?" "Yes." Vizette nodded heavily. "Because I already have a curse, I just want to know the contents of the contract and what the curse will actually do." "The auxiliary tools are meant to guide. It's to help me find those answers, not to force the formation of the curse contract." Dumbledore smiled contentedly and then asked casually, "You seem to know a fair bit about curses too. Did the other guardians help you?" "The reason I fainted last night was because of this," Vizette answered honestly. "Only after you explained the specifics of the curse tonight did everything click into place." "That's not surprising." Dumbledore finished his tea and regarded Vizette with a touch of feeling. He'd spoken with Harry that morning about Parseltongue and had even asked whether Harry had heard anything unusual the night of the Halloween feast. Harry's reaction had been different from Vizette's. He had been quiet for a long moment and then simply shook his head. Harry, however, had been willing to keep Vizette's matter to himself. No one was to speak of what happened last night. Harry had needed to drink Skelligro to regrow his bones the previous night, and people had little appetite for prying into that. With conversations already swirling from the morning, it was hard for the students to say exactly who had heard what about the attack on Colin's camera. "Headmaster Dumbledore, there's still time before midnight. Should I go prepare the basilisk skin fragments and the ritual array now?" Vizette asked. Dumbledore considered. "How do you plan to tell Severus?" "I'll tell Professor Snape the truth," Vizette said without hesitation. Dumbledore murmured. "Would you like me to handle it? Including the ritual array, it's a small favor." Vizette stared into his teacup for a long moment before answering slowly. "Headmaster Dumbledore, do you think Professor Snape would be capable of forming a curse with particularly harsh conditions?" Dumbledore's face showed no surprise. "It seems you've learned quite a bit about Severus's past." Vizette nodded bluntly. "I worry about that. Judging from the timing of this attack, Voldemort might not be truly gone. Until we fully understand the secret, paying every price isn't worth it. Only by learning the truth behind Voldemort's resurgence can any later actions be meaningful. So, at least until then, I don't want Severus to be exposed to a curse. He's very talented and still young. He shouldn't be bound by one. The more powerful the curse, the stricter and harsher the contract," Dumbledore said. "For those who seek a shortcut, a curse can be the quickest way to power. But having been through it, I say this plain. A curse is a kind of shackling. Using one is like drinking poison to quench your thirst. It's a last resort. What's more, finding a curse that fits a soul is incredibly difficult." Dumbledore's expression sobered, and Vizette made the connection. "Headmaster Dumbledore, is this because of 1945? Dumbledore waved the thought away lightly. "You should go back and rest. We'll meet again at midnight." Seeing that Dumbledore did not wish to press the matter, Vizette did not ask further. Even the headmaster's refusal to answer directly had spoken volumes. After taking a draught of a soul-soothing potion, Vizette slept peacefully and woke refreshed well before midnight. He kept his word to Dumbledore and descended the moving staircase to the room where a barrier had been set and the Mirror of Eris had stood. Dumbledore was already there. In the center of the room stood the tall, ornately framed Mirror of Erised. "Good evening, Headmaster Dumbledore," Vizette said as he stepped forward. "Good evening." Dumbledore gave a soft nod. "I brought it here to recreate the situation from before." Vizette stood before the mirror. Its reflection was still divided into 3 sections, as he remembered from last year. The left image, once a chaos of black and flickering red light with the dark mark, was different now. It was pure black with no ember-like red light, and the dark mark had changed into a serpent pattern shaped like the rune. The middle panel showed an ocean of books as before. The right remained a warm, flawless white. If I have the curse now, does that mean I passed Salazar Slytherin's test? Vizette wondered, and tried to recreate the scene from last year. He activated his magic eye and stared at the mirror of Erasid for 5 full seconds. Nothing changed. "Let's begin," Dumbledore prompted. "Empty your mind and try to resonate with the ritual array beneath your feet." The mirror's lack of reaction told Vizette he hadn't truly completed whatever test the mirror required. Perhaps, like the trials in the mirror world, the curse was only part of the reward. Only by really overcoming the basilisk could he return to whatever lay within the mirror. Vizette practiced the guardian meditation method and, guided by Dumbledore, tried to attune himself to the ritual array. After a while, Dumbledore asked, "Any response?" Vizette shook his head. "I can vaguely feel something like a heartbeat, but it's extremely faint." "There's some reaction, but not much," Dumbledore said. "Perhaps because it originates from the dark mark." Vizette followed the thought. "Headmaster Dumbledore, then I shouldn't focus on myself. Should I recall memories of Lord Voldemort and try to use those instead? 317. Is there such a good thing? We can try that," Headmaster Dumbledore said after a moment's thought, answering Vizette's suggestion from experience. "Then let's adjust it. Empty your mind. Try to recall the situation at the end of last school year. Recall the encounter with Lord Voldemort." To be as precise as possible, Vizette lifted his wand and cast a mental spell, drawing the memories from the end of last school year into the present. As those memories surfaced, the ritual circle on the floor flared to life. Thump, thump, thump! A pulsing sound filled his ears. He pressed a hand to his chest, his heartbeat. The thudding spread, the circle's light broadened, and his awareness expanded. When he came to himself, he was in Salazar Slytherin's Chamber of Secrets. He felt as if he were the chamber itself, sensing the drifting dust and green mist. Before him stood a young man in a Hogwarts uniform. On the breast of the robe gleamed the silver snake on green, the Slytherin crest. This was Lord Voldemort in his school days. He had pale skin, sharp features, and hair and eyes the same dark color. Compared to the Voldemort Vizette had destroyed at the end of last year, this young Voldemort looked almost handsome. The later form had become something else entirely. From a shadowed corner of the chamber, a basilisk uncoiled, even larger than the shed skin Vizette had once seen, at least 15 meters long. Young Voldemort showed no fear. He closed his eyes and hissed in Parseltongue, "Come, let us make a contract. I am ready." At the first sibilant sound, Vizette felt a magical bond form between the boy and the snake. The basilisk slithered, circling him clockwise until it coiled around his body. As it tightened its grip, the boy's pale skin darkened to a bluish purple, like a bruise. The serpent did not relent until the boy's skin began to weep blood. It flicked its long tongue and tasted the tiny pearls of blood. Satisfied, it opened its vast maw and bit into the boy across the waist. Its fangs, like curved knives, sliced through flesh with dull thuds. Most of the boy's body seemed to be torn, yet he showed no sign of pain. Instead, he smiled, bright and wild, like a flame setting a fuse. The smile shifted into something cruel. He hissed again in Parseltongue, "Take it. Take what little I have left. Take it all. I don't want it. That fig leaf meant to hide reproductive instincts. Take it," he spat. "I offer it all to you. Take everything." The basilisk replied with a brief, satisfied hiss. Then, somehow, the ravaged body that should have been shredded was whole again. Where the snake had bitten, in its mouth lay a ball of white light the size of a fist, warm and radiant. The basilisk raised its head and swallowed the light. Its vertical yellow pupils narrowed with deep satisfaction. The magic link between human and serpent, which had been ethereal, became visible. Variegated patterns, like a basilisk's scales, spread from the droplets of blood across the young man's skin. Those mottled markings gathered on his forehead and formed a rune-like mark, first a twisted chi that wriggled and shifted into another symbol. The boy muttered to himself, "Petrification, fatal, 2 traits?" He narrowed his eyes. "No, petrification, useless. I want ultimate death, pure death." The scent faded, and with it the mottling. His skin blackened, a muddy, chaotic black. The sun on his brow seemed to pulse. With each beat, the blackness was drawn into it, the rune growing darker and deeper. A realization came to Vizette. The incantation trait Voldemort had obtained was death. At the end of last school year, Vizette had destroyed Lord Voldemort, leaving behind only the empty shell of that death incantation, the Dark Mark. When Vizette had touched the basilisk's shed skin earlier, that shell had reacted with the skin and formed an empty container capable of holding a petrification incantation. It was only an empty shell because he had touched merely the shed skin, the basilisk's empty husk. If he wanted the true petrification incantation, he would have to touch the living basilisk itself so that the creature could fill the shell. And when the basilisk bit the young Voldemort, the white light torn from him was the price paid for acquiring death. It was not a legal contract in the usual sense, but an exchange of emotion. From Voldemort's words, that fig leaf meant to hide reproductive instincts. Vizette inferred that the emotion given up was love. When the basilisk devoured that love, Voldemort lost his capacity for it, and the incantation's condition was fulfilled. That meant the incantation left behind for Vizette no longer demanded any payment. Vizette opened his eyes slowly. "Is there really such a good thing?" he murmured. "Vizette, what good thing are you talking about?" Dumbledore asked at once, brow creasing with concern. "What price will you have to pay?" "Headmaster, I don't have to pay anything," Vizette said, smiling. "Lord Voldemort already paid. He paid with his feelings, his love." "Love?" Dumbledore frowned. "Show me what you saw." Spirit transfer memory. Vizette raised his wand and cast the recall, bringing the scene he'd just witnessed into focus. "Headmaster, this is what I saw and heard." He replayed the memory for Dumbledore, and when it ended, he said, "From this I can confirm two things. First, my incantation is special. It doesn't demand I fulfill a contract or pay a price. Second, my incantation is still an empty shell. I need to come into contact with a living basilisk to fill that shell and obtain the petrification trait. 318. The curse contract that cannot be revealed. That truly is an unexpected result." Dumbledore looked half ready to laugh and half ready to cry, but he also let out a long, relieved sigh. Vizette lifted his wand slightly. The memory strands on its tip shimmered. "Actually, I can't guarantee the accuracy of my judgment." "Headmaster Dumbledore, about the curse. I'll need your help," Vizette said. "You have far more experience and can give a better assessment." "All right." Dumbledore lifted his wand, took the memory strands Vizette had extracted, and pressed them to his temple, letting the images flood his mind. After a long moment, he withdrew his wand, a faint smile of pleased discovery on his face. "These memories are most helpful. They resolve several puzzles." He exhaled and met Vizette's eyes. "Vizette, judging from what I know of Lord Voldemort, I've come to the same conclusion as you. It really was love after all." His expression was complicated, threaded with pity, as though he saw Voldemort as someone who had utterly abandoned love and become, in the end, extremely pitiable. If Voldemort had seen Dumbledore's face at that moment, he would likely have flown into a rage. Dumbledore let out a soft murmur. "The ultimate death curse. No wonder his killing curse is so different." He closed his eyes for a moment, as if remembering. "It's swift, it's accurate, and it can even be cast without an incantation. I thought that was because his soul was completely twisted by the dark arts." Vizette blinked in surprise. "Headmaster Dumbledore, Lord Voldemort's killing curse, can it actually be cast silently?" Dumbledore smiled. "The ultimate death curse in exchange for the ultimate killing curse. We've just uncovered one of his secrets, haven't we?" He began to pace the room around the mirror of Erised. "Vizette, curses are peculiar things. Do you know about Amortentia?" Vizette nodded. "Yes, it's currently the most potent love potion, said to have been invented by the wizard Diarmuid Dubn in the 3rd century AD. It can make the drinker feel an intense obsession or infatuation. It also shares certain properties with Polyjuice Potion. Different people will smell different scents from it, depending on what they love most. Very odd magic." "Exactly." Dumbledore clapped his hands softly. "In fact, after much investigation back then, I discovered that the inventor of Amortentia was himself bound by a curse." Vizette's eyebrows rose. "The curse Diarmuid had was the ability to concoct the most effective love potion?" "Yes, the capacity to invent Amortentia came from the curse," Dumbledore confirmed, and in the end, Diarmuid died because of that same curse contract. He fell in love with a witch named Grain Cormac. To be with her, he made a curse contract, eloped with her, and took a bottle of amortentia with him. Vizette frowned in confusion. Love potions don't create genuine love. Why use one to bind someone to you? Possessiveness, perhaps, or a strange fixation, Dumbledore said, shaking his head. But there was a more important reason. Grain was already betrothed. Her fiancé was Diarmuid's good friend, Fionn mac Cumhaill. The elopement turned them into sworn enemies, and Fionn set out to find Grain. Diarmuid truly loved Grain. While they were together, he confessed everything to her, even the specifics of his curse contract. As time passed, Diarmuid grew tired of controlling Grain with amortentia. Grain's long obedience wore thin, and Fionn, hiding in the shadows, seized his chance. Fionn learned the terms of Diarmuid's curse from a recovered Grain. One clause forbade him from fighting the Torch Truith, so Fionn engineered an accident. Through that engineered accident, Diarmuid broke the curse and died beneath the tusks of the Torch Truith. Vizette, what do you make of this story? The Torch Truith is supposed to be a magical creature from Africa, right? Vizette asked, frowning. And I thought Diarmuid O'Doobney lived in Dublin. Should I understand it like this? Vizette continued. The curse contract was optional, and Diarmuid tried to outwit it by choosing a tricky loophole. He assumed that because the Torch Truith was in Africa, the curse's binding would be less strict. He never expected Fionn mac Cumhaill to find a Torch Truith and stage such an accident. Curse contracts are difficult to evade because they're usually closely tied to the signatory. Dumbledore shook his head gently. But the application of a curse can be blurred. In fact, Diarmuid did try to blur it. The true content of his curse wasn't what he led others to believe. It forbade him from fighting and killing his relatives. And that Torch Truith was actually his half-brother. His brother had become a Torch Truith wandering the hills because his animagus transformation failed. Headmaster Dumbledore, this all feels like a chain of coincidences leading to inevitability, Vizette said, his brow furrowing. The curse refers to the Torch Truith. A failed animagus becomes a Torch Truith, and it just so happens to be Diarmuid's half-brother. Are you suggesting that after making a curse contract, one is controlled by it and walks a predetermined path? Dumbledore asked, an intrigued glint in his eyes. It's an interesting thought. There is indeed a possibility of that. Unfortunately, very few witches and wizards make curse contracts, and most, to some extent, plan on breaking their oaths. So all wizards with curse contracts have tacitly agreed never reveal the terms of your curse. Then, what about a curse in my situation? Vizette's mind turned inward. Should I fabricate a curse contract? If there are witches or wizards who can identify curses, perhaps appearing more normal would be safer. Fabricate a curse contract? Dumbledore gave him a knowing smile. Making a special curse ordinary is one way to protect yourself. That could work. He remembered the Defense Against the Dark Arts lesson at the start of the year, when Vizette had used only transfiguration and simple spells to handle the trouble with the house elf. Just as Vizette opened his mouth, Dumbledore raised a hand and stopped him. Vizette, if you do fabricate a curse contract, don't tell me. Don't tell anyone. 319. Curse, the shackles of fate. Moonlight sliced through gaps in the clouds, throwing the outline of the castle and the motto, for the greater good, into harsh, pale relief. The letters were marred and pitted with traces of dark magic, giving Nurmengard an even grimmer aspect. A white-haired man lounged against the stone wall, one leg propped on the bed frame, watching the pale light through a crack in the stone window. He sighed. The curse, the shackles of fate. Maybe I pushed too hard back then. Maybe he wouldn't have been shackled. Serena Pendragon flipped through a magazine titled Natural Herbs. Grindelwald, she said, you always think you should have been the one to bind him, don't you? Grindelwald's voice was soft. To be honest, I have seen Dumbledore. Do you really think you could bind him? I always feel like you're the one who's bound. He lowered his head and blinked. The contrast in his eyes was striking, his right eye a bright azure, his left a dull, dark blue. When he blinked, only the right lid closed, the left eyelid only trembled. That's an interesting thought, Grindelwald murmured. Do you want to discuss it? I could talk for a day and a night. Not at all, Serena said, setting the magazine down and standing. I was just passing by and thought I'd take a look. Oh, this Natural Herbs has good news. Hogwarts has started cultivating mandrakes again. In a few years, they'll be much more common. Hogwarts did that once before, last century, Grindelwald chuckled. If you hadn't dug up the mandrakes when you were dealing with the Isaiah Society, they might not have become such a scarce potion ingredient. Serena waved a hand. Honestly, it's because of the Guardian's special status, hidden in the long current of history like the Isaiah Society. I suppose, Grindelwald said, if there were a ranking for dark wizards, your name would be on it, certainly in the top 2. Serena shrugged. Take that as a compliment. I was acting in self-defense. Maybe my methods were a bit aggressive. And the mandrakes worked because they were effective. Biting cabbages and devil's snare were useful too. Yes, they were effective, Grindelwald agreed. The magical plants you favor are now rarer as potion ingredients because of that. It doesn't matter. It'll be over soon anyway. Serena handed the magazine back. Want to use this to pass the time? Grindelwald looked out at the moon again. Why don't you help me find copies of Transfiguration today? I need issues from 1894 to 1925. Serena slid Natural Herbs away with a knowing look. You want those old issues? I think I know why. Grindelwald nodded. Oh, early next year, February to March, there will be a major incident in Mumbai. You should go see it. Serena glanced at his left eye. Has your third eye recovered? Not fully, Grindelwald admitted softly. I can only glimpse fragments, very scattered. After so many years of sleep, you've only managed to piece together that one event, and you're not even sure whether it was the Isaiah Society. Serena shrugged. No big deal. If it's a major event, it's probably their work. Let's go. Grindelwald agreed. And remember, Transfiguration today. Some investigative magic, a prophetic vision, a potion, even an offhand remark. Any of these could expose the curse contract, Vizette. You must understand that. Even if it's fabricated, you must guard against those methods. Only by increasing the contract's authenticity does your fabrication gain weight. Dumbledore regarded Vizette with searching eyes, his tone layered with implication. Vizette met the gaze, understood the deeper meaning, and nodded. You're right. I need to make it a habit. Then the virtual can become real. Very good, Dumbledore said, satisfied. It seems you've understood. Vizette asked, Headmaster Dumbledore, how do we use the curse contract against Lord Voldemort? Dumbledore stroked his beard. It's a complicated process. Uncovering his secrets remains important. Perhaps Lord Voldemort has already made his choice. In the end, he will reveal his own weakness and destroy himself. Vizette looked puzzled. I don't quite follow. That's not for you to worry about, Dumbledore said with a soft sigh. For now, since your curse has no obvious danger, you should go back and rest. You're right. Tomorrow's Monday, and I have classes. Vizette glanced toward the mirror of Erised nearby. Headmaster, can the mirror stay here for a while? Of course, if it helps you, Dumbledore replied. When Dumbledore twisted the office doorknob, someone was already inside. At the sound, Snape, draped in black, turned his head slightly and said in a low voice, As long as you don't debase yourself by greedily eating expired candy, you won't get poisoned or swollen. Also, tea that smells fishy doesn't suit you either, so you need a piece of snakeskin. What are you planning to do with it? Dumbledore moved quickly to his seat, smiling. To investigate something, and I have good news. Snape raised an eyebrow. Concerning the Dark Lord? Or has Lockhart finally died practicing his signature in the middle of the night? I hope he doesn't come back as a ghost. You're right about the Dark Lord, Dumbledore said plainly. My earlier hunch was correct. We can defeat Voldemort with, of all things, love. In fact, this has happened before. Only today did I connect the dots. The last time Voldemort was defeated, it was precisely by the power of love. How? Snape leaned forward, eager despite himself. How can love be used to defeat Lord Voldemort? 320. Dobby's memory. Dumbledore hadn't seen Snape look so anxious in a long time. He could easily imagine how Severus would react if Dumbledore said plainly, We need to hand Harry over to Lord Voldemort so Lord Voldemort can gain Lily's love. Snape would move heaven and earth to stop it. After all, part of why he stayed at Hogwarts was because Harry would one day be there. If Dumbledore explained the decree clearly, the power behind it would have to be introduced. For now, Dumbledore felt Snape was not the right person to pursue the decree. Aside from how difficult it would be to find a matching one, Snape's hatred of Voldemort would push him into paying a terrible price. Worse, even if Dumbledore kept the decree secret, Snape's talents would likely lead him to connect it to Vizette and extract the secret that way. Rather than let that happen for no reason, Dumbledore looked at the glass file beside him that held threads of Dobby's memories. He cleared his throat. "Severus, right now I can only be sure of one thing. We can defeat Lord Voldemort with love." Snape narrowed his eyes. "I can announce one certainty as well. When you're hungry, you should eat. It seems I've reached a profound conclusion. Also, if your mind isn't clear, I suggest you drink more soul-soothing potion. Tell me, what exactly do you want me to do?" "This is a process of gathering clues," Dumbledore said, picking up the file and holding it tight. "Just as last year, through Vizette and Harry, we confirmed Voldemort wasn't dead. This year looks similar. You understand that, don't you? From the snakeskin fragments and a guiding charm, I glimpsed something that led me to conclude Voldemort's weakness is love." Snape rubbed his thumb and forefinger, staring at Dumbledore as if trying to detect a lie. Dumbledore, well practiced in occlumency and far older, betrayed no hint. He set the field down. "Severus, aren't you curious about Dobby's memories? Perhaps they'll give us more useful clues." Snape returned his look slowly. "Then let us see." They stood before the Pensieve. After the familiar dizzying sensation, they found themselves in a grand drawing room. Snape said simply, "Malfoy Manor's drawing room." They'd appeared behind the fireplace. Dobby was crouched nearby, trying not to be seen, listening intently to Lucius's conversation with a visitor. Snape looked at the man opposite Lucius, a portly, middle-aged fellow. Old Crabbe, Vincent Crabbe's father. Like Lucius, he escaped trial. "Very similar. I can tell," Dumbledore murmured. Old Crabbe's voice trembled with worry. "That Arthur led a search of my place. Lucius, they fined me a huge sum. They took some of your things, too." "I know," Lucius said, yawning as he stirred the black tea before him. He didn't look directly at Old Crabbe, as if the cup were more important. "I'll pay the fines for you. After all, those items were being kept for me." Old Crabbe hurriedly shook his head, a grateful smile on his face. "Who are we to each other? I didn't mean, still, thank you." "Lucius, that Arthur is too presumptuous. Shouldn't we do something? He's disgracing our pure-blood families." "They're the scum of pure-blood families," Lucius said, taking a slow sip of his tea. "I've got something here left by the Dark Lord. I might as well bestow it upon them cheaply." Dobby clapped a hand over his mouth to keep from making a sound. Old Crabbe leaned forward, lowering his voice. "Lucius, are you planning to frame them?" "Frame them?" Lucius raised an elegant eyebrow. "I am bestowing. They live in such squalor. Can receiving an item from the Dark Lord be called framing?" Old Crabbe nodded eagerly. "Right, it's a bestowal. We're helping them." The memory shifted, but they were still in the drawing room. Dobby had just finished rekindling the incense when Lucius and Draco stepped out from the fireplace. Lucius's expression was grave. Listening to Lucius and Narcissa, Snape and Dumbledore were not surprised. Among pure-blood families, it would be odd not to find dark artifacts in the manor. Lucius crossed to the study, and Dobby crept to the doorway to listen. The dark mark appeared. "Dumbledore protected the Dark Lord," Lucius murmured. Snape's brow arched. "It seems Lucius encountered the same thing. But Vizette is indeed fine," Dumbledore said, stroking his beard. "A remarkably strange coincidence." Dobby was summoned back, and Draco entered the study. He stood with his back to the door, uncertainty and fear visible on his face, then left. Dobby reappeared at the study door, ears pressed to the wood. Inside, Lucius appeared to be rummaging through something, and a long silence fell. Even a house elf could be patient. Dumbledore and Snape said nothing, waiting as the memory unfolded. At last, Lucius sighed, long and troubled. "Did the Dark Lord come to remind me? Or to warn me?" His voice carried a strange uncertainty. Dumbledore and Snape exchanged looks. Lucius went on, speaking to himself. "I'm afraid the Dark Lord is playing a grand game. He's chosen to hide in plain sight, right under Dumbledore's nose."